Good evening and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lanina Rasool. In honor of Youth Month, tonight we are looking at young girls and the violence that they are exposed to in their communities, in schools, and in their homes on a daily basis. In September last year, Patrick Solomons, the director of Molo Songololo, a child's rights organization in Cape Town, posted the following on Facebook. I'm listening to a discussion with 10 girls aged 12 to 17 years, facilitated by Molo Songololo's Chloe Johnson in Atlantis, about being a girl and young woman and the challenges at home, school, and in the community they face. My heart is bursting with anger and I'm fighting back tears. Honest, open discussion, sharing their views and experiences, how they are treated, the everyday abuse, the confusion, fear, and marginalization, frustration, anger, and depression, and constant assault on their bodies, and forced to grow up before their bodies and mental state is ready for adult life and sex. Listening to their voices, the honesty and hunger for sharing, being listened to and taken seriously is overwhelming. I am an emotional wreck right now. The post resonated on so many levels that we invited Molo Songololo into our studio to come and speak about the lived realities of young girls and women. After the break, we'll be joined by Chloe Johnson, who was a facilitator in the workshops by Molo Songololo. But before that, we're going to have a look at a short video by the Justice Desk, another rights-based organization who offer counseling and assistance to young survivors of gender-based violence. Let's have a look.
The Molo Club is a project that is run by the Justice Desk. It is based in Nyanga, the murder capital of South Africa. It focuses on supporting young girl survivors of rape and other forms of gender-based violence. There are three elements to it. The first one is self-defense and fitness, so that we're able to defend ourselves when we need to. The second element is female empowerment workshops, where they equip us to become powerful women and leaders. The last element is mental health support. Mental health is as important as physical health, and as girls, we go through a lot. I would say joining the Molo Club was really a life-changing decision. Growing up in a community like Nyanga comes with a lot of challenges, especially when you're a girl child.
I'm a rape survivor. I was raped when I was 6 years old. And because of this incident, I grew up with a lot of anger and hatred. I even wanted to take my own life. But after I joined this great club, I've learned a lot of things. It has taught me to tell my story without being ashamed. Because I am not my past. And I'm not a victim, but a victor.
Growing up with the constant fear of being sexually abused wasn't really a pleasant experience. Growing up with the fear of dying in the hands of a man was not a nice thing. I used to be afraid of men. I never believed in myself. I never even liked myself. I was never a confident person. The project has taught me so many things, and it has really opened my eyes. It has taught me that I am worthy of being loved. It has taught me to love myself and to never look down on other girls. Because in communities like Nyanga, girls are taught to look down on each other and envy each other. But that's not what this project is about.
Now I will tell my story to inspire other girls who are also survivors and show them that our past does not define us.
We are taught that all we as women are good for is serving men. And I refuse to bow down to a man.
Wathinta abafazi, wathinta imbokodo.
That was a video by the Justice Desk about their project in Nyanga, Cape Town, where they equip and capacitated young survivors of gender-based violence. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and tonight we're speaking to Chloe Johnson with Molo Songololo to discuss young girls and gender-based violence. Chloe, thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to The Womxn Show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So, Chloe, we are speaking about, as we've discussed, young girls, teenagers, adolescents who are encountering and experiencing gender-based violence and what that looks like sort of in their lived reality and on a day-to-day basis. And obviously, you're joining us because what you do, I think it's called a Young Women's Forum, and these are some of the topics that you discuss. And so just to start, I wanted to ask, what are some of the findings or some of the stories that come out of the workshops that you do with young girls? And specifically, like, what do they experience in terms of gender-based violence?
I think across the board, because I started with this program, I started running it last year. And throughout the workshops, safety of the girls in our community is one of the main topics that gets spoken about a lot. Girls don't feel safe. They don't feel safe at schools, they don't feel safe at home, they don't feel safe with community members. And that is one of the main issues.
And what are some of the threats to their safety? So what do they say are some of the things that they experience that make them feel unsafe?
I think one of the major things, and it's something that people don't realize, is actually harassment, is the catcalling. When I speak to these girls and I have conversations with them, it irks them. They come to me and they report it on a daily basis, saying, this one said this to me, this is how I felt, this is not okay. Why do people think that this is okay? And also the way in which people communicate with them, the gender roles, it's become an issue for these girls that come to me and reflect about it. They don't understand why, because they are females, they should do this. Because they are girls, they should behave in a certain way. And when you link it to safety, it's not really a direct link, but these girls are not feeling comfortable within their homes. They're not feeling comfortable outside, and that is how we ensure our girls are safe as well. Yeah.
And so when you say catcalling, and I'm remembering also, when I was a teen, I was growing up, we were walking around, and it could just be, I mean, when you think about it, and I think what gets put out into the media often is people think like construction sites and so forth, and spaces where men are gathering. But I mean, I specifically remember I lived in a quite a small area. It would also be sort of groups of boys who were standing on the corner. It could be gangsters by the shop. It could be grown men also who are just standing outside the shop having cigarettes and stuff and just saying like, and I'm being tame now when I say, hey, sexy, come over here, or this. And I remember like the scariest part for me is if somebody would call me over. And do I go? Yeah. And what would happen if I don't go? And are those some of the things, are those some of the things that the girls experience? And what are some of the, and I'm just going to be blunt also, what are some of the extreme things that they, those spaces where they really feel they might be in danger?
Yeah, I think, especially in Atlantis, because the work that we do is, the work that I do is mainly focused here. Girls they don't feel safe going to shops. So little house shops, they are always gang groups of guys standing on corners, and like you said, you have that. Can I have a tour? Why do you look so, smile for me? Why do you look so sad? Things like that. And girls don't know how to react. They don't know, do I go over? Do I be polite? Because on any given day, gangsterism is also one of the issues that we face. And it's difficult to tell if this person is a gangster or not. So in that situation, as a young female, how do I react? Do I go towards them? Do I give them the student even though I don't have? Are they going to be upset with me if I say I don't have money today? Are they going to attack me because I'm not smiling? So all of these things is what girls go through on a daily basis.
And so Chloe, just to shift then also to the harm that they do experience. And again, just coming back to Patrick's post, which we read out earlier in the show, he speaks about the assault on girls' bodies. And we know that South Africa actually tops the global list for rape.
Yeah.
And so it's telling, and from the work that I've done, we also know that the majority of sexual assaults go unreported. But even the ones that are reported, we get over 50,000 reports of rape every year. So do some of those stories also come out?
I mean, it does. We do ensure the girls' confidentiality because that's also, again, one of the key things in making our girls feel safe. Um, but as a group, as Molo Songololo, we encourage them to come, especially on my program, I encourage them to come to me and speak to me. Maybe they don't feel comfortable speaking to their parents. Maybe they don't feel comfortable speaking to community leaders or people at school. So they come to me and in confidentiality can share their stories and I can help them actually take it further. And I mean, it's not only us that do it. There are different communities, different organizations within different communities that also work as liaison through, like, that the young people can work through in order to get the help that they need.
Chloe, so in cases where we have that, we know there are so many reasons why girls don't report sexual assault. And one of the reasons that comes up often is that girls and women are blamed for sexual assault. I mean, little girls are blamed for sexual assault. There is, a young girl, Shanice Apples, who often, she ran a campaign saying girls are not ogat. And, I know that was such a huge theme already. And I have a young daughter, and often just the emphasis on, keeping your legs closed and, it's not overtly said to her, but it's implied often is sort of shield yourself, close your legs.
Dress a certain way.
Dress a certain way, not too short, not to all of these things. So the onus very much is on girls to, one, sort of, not put themselves out there to prevent assault. And the other thing is that if they are assaulted, there's such a huge value placed on being untouched and being a virgin, etc.
Yeah.
That whether it was your fault or not, once you are sexually assaulted, you are now damaged or spoiled. And do these gender norms also come up? And especially where girls have come to you and said that they've been assaulted, are those some of the fears that come up?
Actually, it is. And it happens more often than not. And it's not necessarily always sexually assault related. Sometimes, as you said, some girls are simply not virgins, and then so because of that, they are labeled. And I'm not condoning sex before marriage. I'm just saying that in a community, this is the realities that we're dealing with. But that doesn't make them any less valuable. And also, we also touch on topics that aren't spoken about a lot. I mean, there was a stigma going around at community clinics and hospitals for females trying to go on family planning. So the girls felt like there was no confidentiality, because if my auntie is working at the clinic and she sees me going for family planning, then she'll tell my grandma will tell my neighbors, and then everybody knows that I'm sexually active when maybe I'm not. I'm just going on it because it regulates my periods for whatever reason.
But even if you are sexually active, I mean, it shouldn't,
It shouldn't be, the stigma around it shouldn't be there. So what happened was we actually did a campaign where we had people of the Children's Forum, this was a couple of years back, going out of the clinics, having communications, asking, what is the process? This is how we feel about it. How can we work together? And these were the kids that went themselves. They self-organized, they went. And I think a week back, I spoke to somebody who had gone for family planning, and they said it was one of the easiest processes that has ever been, because she went in, she got it, and she left. And it's amazing how these kids can see that the effort that they are putting into these advocacy groups is actually paying off. Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful story, and it's a wonderful story of girls also taking ownership of this problem. And I think what you're raising such an important point, because it speaks to access. We speak about girls having access to family planning for whatever reason, and even though it's there, it is now there, and it's supposed to be accessible, but actually there are these invisible barriers that are keeping girls from going for it. And I have a similar. I remember once when I was at high school, I went with a friend of mine to go and get, and I think it was the morning after pill. So we're waiting there, and all of a sudden we see one of our teachers who had brought another learner. And I was so horrified that I went to my teacher the next day at school and said, "Miss, I'm not there for myself.
It wasn't for me." Yeah.
I mean, she was lovely. She said, "No, it doesn't matter. Even if it was for you, it's okay. But it's just that thing, right? That stigma." Chloe, I just wanted to ask, so the forum had you guys had a workshop where you collated a lot of the issues and problems and things that girls experience, with a large emphasis on, like you're speaking about, the catcalling. And this was compiled into sort of a proposal or a letter that was
a statement.
A statement that was sent to the Western Cape Child Commissioner, and I think there was a meeting after that. So I just wanted to go into one of the things on the list was very interesting, and that was young girls asking the Western Cape Child Commissioner to try and generate more accountability by government stakeholders, by businesses in the area, to sort of about the men that they employ and the behavior of those men. So there's two things here. One is that the catcalling and this sexualized harassment and other type of harassment is being perpetrated by older employed men. So I just wanted to ask about that, and if that came up, and if that's quite common. And then the other thing is also about the response from the commissioner to having an accountability process.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so sorry for our young girls. I'm a young woman as well, and as I was walking to work, this old opa looked at me and he was like, "I'm gonna come for coffee later," So it's not only our young girls that are experiencing this, but young women as well within our communities. And unfortunately, the majority of it is by older employed men. Yeah. And that is why in the statement the girls put that the government screening needs to take place. These people that are working with children, even if it's in informal situations, they should have the necessary training, because child protection is imperative. There are perpetrators that are out there that haven't been screened, that are being able to work with kids, and it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. And then on your second question, I think it was with regards to the commissioner's response.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was so amazing to be able to sit down and speak with her, to have the kids communicate with her, and the feedback we got from her was amazing. She's such a positive person. One of her key statements was that she cannot work without kids. She cannot do her work without the youth working alongside her. And I think it was so important for them to hear that there's somebody that's fighting for their rights, but also she's willing to work with them, and she realizes that she can't do it alone. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's great. I just wanted to ask about the process, and I'm asking about the process of sort of putting together the statement for other young people and for other young girls in other areas who may not have a sort of formalized forum or structure. Is this something that you would encourage them to sort of, if you have these sorts of concerns, if you see these things in your communities, and you see these things in your schools, because we know this also happens at schools. Yeah. We see it happens with teachers. We see it happen in churches, all of these things, to put this down on a statement, to submit it to someone. I mean, is there anything that they can do about it?
I mean, for girls out there wanting to take action, it's really simple. Like we encourage our girls to self-mobilize. I'm not going to be around forever. So if I'm not here and you want to be confident, then they'll decide, this is an issue that we're having. We can come together as a group. We can brainstorm ideas. We can write it up, put a stamp saying that it's a statement, and send it to community leaders. They can send it to the commissioner herself. She's got a Facebook page. If you Google the commissioner for children in the Western Cape, everything pops up. There are so many other ways that our kids can mobilize, and they can do it themselves. They don't need to wait for organization to come along. Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Chloe. I think that we got a lot out of this conversation. I also think, and I just want to note before we end off for the audience, that teen girls are also children. And I think that we
Teen
forget
girls
that.
are also, yes.
Right, exactly. And so they are also, covered under the Children's Act, right up until, even if they're 17 years old, they're often seen. And I think we said this before we started the interview, that they are judged as adult women often, in terms of the things that they are asked to do, in terms of the way they dress, in terms of the way they are victim blamed afterwards, that they are still children and they still deserve the same type of protection.
100%, I definitely agree.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chloe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a ball talking to you.
That was Chloe Johnson from Molo Songololo. After the break, we're going to be speaking to a representative of the Justice Desk, another rights-based organization that deals with GBV. But let's take a short break, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. Before the break, we spoke to Chloe Johnson from Molo Songololo, speaking about the lived realities and violence that young girls are facing every day in schools, communities, and their homes. Now we're going to be speaking to a representative from the Justice Desk to speak about what they are doing and their project in Younger Cape Town to equip young survivors of GBV. Welcome, Jess, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Jess, I'm so excited to be chatting to the Justice Desk. As you know, we're having this episode this evening speaking about young girls, teenage girls, and gender-based violence. And before we sort of move into that, can you just tell us, what does the Justice Desk do?
Awesome. Well, the Justice Desk, we're a human rights-based nonprofit organization. We operate in South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Our headquarters is in South Africa itself, in Cape Town. And we believe in the power of everyday activism. So we believe that the true experts in a community as to what an issue is, but also how to solve it, are community members themselves. But because of things like injustice and inequality and our history of colonization and apartheid, we don't always have the same access to resources and skills and tools and the necessary platforms needed to lead change. So that's where we come in. We believe that it's not just politicians and social workers and to change the world. We believe it's that every is human. It doesn't school community rights. It needs to be a person. So we come in and we educate and we train and we equip everyday people to be human rights defenders and change makers. Our key areas of focus are human rights education, children's rights, and gender-based violence. And we do a collection of work, which includes research and advocacy, for example, at the United Nations, or trying to change local laws. We do a lot of training up of people to be everyday activists, as well as creating educational materials. And finally, community empowerment. So we work very closely with communities where we will train and equip them and support them in running their own community-based initiatives that target particular issues. 4 of them which are quite successful. The first is the Umoya Project, where we work with the rights of elderly, disabled, abandoned and abused people. We have the Youth Ambassadors Project. It runs across 45 schools in the 3 countries, and we have 2 to 5 incredible young people per school who are standing up for the rights of children. They run 4 large-scale human rights campaigns a year. watching human traffickers and setting up police WhatsApp lines for the deaf community and abolishing tampon tax. They are incredible. And then we have 2 projects that focus specifically on gender-based violence. The first is called the Umbokoro Club. The slogan is Watinda Bafazi, Watinda Umbokoto, which means you strike a woman, you strike a rock. And it's a project for girl survivors of rape and gender-based violence. They're between the ages of 9 and 19, and we do things like female empowerment, workshops, leadership skills, self-defense and fitness, and then mental health care and trauma counseling is a major component of the program. And our last project is Nsiki Yatemba, also gender-based violence focused. It's with young boys. South Africa is known as the fatherless nation, because obviously most young children don't have fathers and those that do. So gender-based violence, you know, the narrative that we use as a country when we speak about it is pretty warped. We always talk about GBV as being a women's issue when it's actually a man's issue. So this is a project for young boys who get together. It's a mentorship program. And through outdoor-based education, our young men are challenging gender-based violence. They're challenging toxic masculinity. And they're redefining what it means for them to be boys and to be men. And they're having very uncomfortable but really incredible conversations to create movements of change in their communities. So that's the work of the Justice Desk.
Wow. I mean, it's a huge task that you guys are taking on, like many of them. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I'm going to just move into gender-based violence so that we can focus on that as the focus of this episode. And so you mentioned the Mbokodo Club, and I have seen that is a club that is focused in Nyanga, which often we are calling at this point, I think, the murder capital. It's often referred to. And so just in that also, there's a lot of gender-based violence. And you are mentioning young survivors of gender-based violence. So can you tell us just a little bit about what is the lived reality for young girls who are living in these really dangerous areas? I mean, in general, but also Nyanga is a really, really dangerous area.
Definitely. The project started off in Nyanga, which is the murder capital of South Africa, but it expanded into Bonteheuwel as well as Khayelitsha. Okay. And the project has been so successful that we've actually had people from across the country send their young daughters who are survivors of rape and GBV down to Cape Town to be a part of this project because they've heard that it's that impactful, which shook us quite a lot. So we cannot wait to expand it to the rest of the country. But yes, in the communities that our young girls face, I mean, I think across the board in our entire country, South Africa is the unsafest place in the world to be a young girl and a woman for that matter. We experience incredible rates of gender-based violence. And in fact, we're experiencing a femicide, mass murder of women and girls purely because of their gender. We actually have countries that are war-torn countries, so countries that are at war, whose rates of GBV are less, and it's actually safer in those countries to be a woman than it is to be in South Africa. So our rates of murder are unbelievable. And 1 out of every 5 women who have been murdered in South Africa in general, they will be murdered by their intimate partner. 1 in 3 girls will also be raped by their intimate partner. And it's incredibly common. I mean, we had one of our girls in our project say, rape is like clockwork. It's just a matter of time before it happens. And the fact that, you know, a 9-year-old girl has this type of realization on her life and her experience as a woman in South Africa just shows how scary the situation is. South Africa is also a country where being a woman means you're more likely to experience poverty. And if you're a Black woman, 30% more likely to experience poverty. So being a young girl in South Africa, you are incredibly likely to be a victim of sexual abuse, rape in particular, GBV, but you also have a very high chance of being murdered, and an even higher chance of being murdered by your actual partner. I think another one of our girls said something which shook me, and she said, "To survive love in Nyanga is to survive." And I said, "What does she mean by that?" And she said, "Well, a successful relationship means that at the end of it, you're not dead." And that, I think, is so heartbreaking to hear, that our young girls, again, have that level of understanding where they can actually see and tell the stories of how serious gender-based violence is in this country and how much their lives are at risk purely for being a girl.
And, you know, it's so interesting because what you're speaking to also is how normalized it's become, that girls are really just like, they're living around sort of this danger. They found a way to sort of navigate around this danger, but knowing that, I mean, those statements in itself is knowing that, you know, trying not to let it end in my death, in my murder, but finding ways to cope. I wanted to ask, so also you see that what I found really interesting and what I love about the program is that you are offering these programs to survivors of gender-based violence. And one component of that in a country where we have an 8.6% conviction rate for rape means I'm sure a lot of the survivors you are seeing are women or are girls who have not reported or who have reported and didn't receive justice. And that in itself also becomes a secondary, like a really terrible secondary trauma. I mean, in itself, almost, you know, you lose hope. So, you know, the rape meant nothing. So I mean nothing, or my body means nothing. I mean, is that something that you also address in the program, and that that kind of trauma is the trauma that you have to deal with, the trauma of not having gotten justice in any way?
Most definitely. I think in South Africa, a study showed that only 1 in 23 women end up reporting rape. They end up telling somebody, just not the police. And I think it's because, you know, for way too long, our society, and women in particular, have been let down by police. When they go to police stations, they get re-traumatized by the experience of having to explain what has happened to them. We once had a situation where one of our girls, her rape story was in particularly quite interesting to the police officers. So they made her tell the story again and again and again, and called in a different police officer every time to hear the story.
Oh my God.
By the end of this, the girl put her death because she was so severely traumatized by this, she wasn't able to move forward. I think re-traumatization is a major issue that we experience as a country because we have desensitized so much to the level that our rape culture is just commonplace. We make rape jokes. We are constantly blaming victims of rape instead of the people who are perpetrating rape. We refer to GBV and rape as a woman's issue. Meanwhile, it is a man's issue. And we've just created cultures where, you know, just treating women like second-class citizens, like not being human, is commonplace in our country. And it's reinforced through our patriarchal societies, in our cultures, in our religions, in our societal norms. Every aspect of South African society is set up to benefit men over women. And a lot of the time, our young girls feel like, you know, the system is set up against me anyway. There's no point in reporting.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that when it comes to any form of sexual violence and gender-based violence, you are so traumatized, and you will continually be re-traumatized, and there are many triggers in life that you will face. So we are constantly seeing our young girls, you know, walking through a street and hearing a bang and suddenly falling to the ground. Or one of our girls just getting a sniff of alcohol, for example, and breaking down into tears because her attacker, that may have been the smell of his breath. So our young women are constantly in a state of PTSD. They are constantly in a state where they are grappling with so much trauma that they can barely function in society. And yet they're expected to go to work, go to school, raise a family if they, you know, not even if they choose to. Most women don't have a choice. They're expected to just go on with life as usual, even though they're dealing with this trauma. So it is an incredibly troubling issue that we are dealing with, and we're not naming it as a country. We're not recognizing that our women are under PTSD. They're experiencing incredible trauma. They're way more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. And instead, we're just saying, okay, let's just, you know, talk, you know, just say, okay, we're experiencing a femicide, rape is wrong. But, you know, but I would never guess that any man in my community is a rapist. So let me not, you know, say that. Which is also, I've heard someone say recently, why is it that every woman knows another woman that's been raped, but no man tends to know any man who's ever raped anyone? So we're very quick to defend men. We're very quick to, you know, paint men as, oh, he would never do that. He was such a nice guy. He has kids, or he's an uncle, or he's a son. Well, guess what? Every single rapist is related to someone, is a father or a son or an uncle. So we need to get real about how we are favoring men and their experiences, even the experience in the fight against GBV. We are favoring men over women.
Jess, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I wish we had more time, but, we're out of time and we have to end off soon. But I want to, as an organization that empowers survivors and within the context of all of the constraints that you have mentioned, I mean, that is our daily reality for women and girls. It's the daily reality for survivors, those who do survive, who go on to report or don't report. I often think when we think about all of the girls and women who do not report, I think about the rates and the levels of, as you've mentioned, PTSD, just how women just walking around, with PTSD, having never had access to mental health, which is another thing you mentioned. I mean, generally in society, they say, 1 in 10 people have access to mental health. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, also, we are looking at it's so much trauma, really, trauma that's just walking around. As an organization that provides support, what can you say to some of the viewers out there? And really just, there'll be women, there'll be girls, there'll be women. I get women all of, so much, all of the time since I started the show, just sometimes messaging me, telling me that this happened to me when I was 5, when I was 15, when I was 18. And these are women who are telling the story for the first time. And it just really opened my eyes to how many survivors are out there who are watching, who have never had access to any therapy or outlet for this. I can't even, there's so much that I don't know if you can think of just a few things or a few pointers that you can start with that you can offer to the rest of them. And hopefully we can have you back for another episode to unpack this further.
Yes. I would say to any victim, first off, don't see yourself as a victim. At the Justice Desk, we call victor because you have overcome something that is absolutely incredibly hectic. And the fact that you are here today proves that you are not a victim, you are a victor. Secondly, know that there are people, many people out there who believe you, we love you, and we want to hear you. We want to listen to you and support you. So please reach out. You can contact the Justice Desk. You can go to our website, justicedesk.org. The National GBV hotline is 0800 150 150. Rape crisis 021 447 and 9762. You can also go to the police 10111. There are many resources on things that you can do to support yourself. You can also find that on our website, justicedesk.org, by clicking the resource tab. If you're in a position where your life is at risk, please know that your life is valuable. You are important and there are people to help. You can go to a magistrate's court for a protection order to try and protect yourself. If you have been in a situation where you have been raped and you think because it's your husband or your partner or someone that you had a previous relationship with or are currently in a relationship with, that doesn't matter. Rape is rape and sexual assault and GBV is just that. So please reach out anyway. We have laws in this country that are there to protect you, and we have people who are there to help. So please go to a police station and report if you feel comfortable doing. If right now you are in a space where you do not feel like right now you are in a space where you can report, I would really advise you to go to a hospital, go ask to speak to a doctor, maybe even one who specializes in women. You can also go to one of the Tutuzela centers. Go get a medical check. The doctors there will take all the evidence they need from your body. They will keep it safely from you. And when you are ready one day to report, all of that information will be there, ready, waiting for you as evidence in your trial. So like I said, you are valuable. You are so incredibly important. And there are people out there who would like to help you. And we are standing here with open arms. So again, you can go to justicedesk.org, the gender-based hotline 0800 150 150. Rape Crisis also is an incredible organization who you can contact. We have Childline with legal aid, again, the police. There are many different people who are out there who can help. Also on the Justice Desk website, we'll list all these numbers and contacts for you if you didn't get them right now, so you can take your time accessing them. But gender-based violence and violence against women is not natural, it is not normal, and it should not be tolerated. There is no reason why women should ever be treated in that way. You are a human being, you deserve fundamental human rights, and there are many people out there, we are out there to help you access them.
Jess, thank you so very, very, very much. Everyone, we've posted also the website address on the screen, so please do go there. We have to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
That was the Justice Desk. Now we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
That was the Justice Desk. Now we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
That was the Justice Desk. Now we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
That was the Justice Desk. Now we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
And that's all we have for this evening. But before we go, let's have a look at one more video from the Justice Desk from one of the survivors who are part of their program. In the words of a teenager who has been exposed to violence, let's hear what she has to say.
Man, what is wrong with you? Have you no shame, taking what is not yours? Have you no heart, treating me like your punching bag? Why? All because of the precious jewel that lies between my thighs. Do you feel happy every time you disempower me? Does seeing bodily harm on my body satisfy you? Has your non-consensual sexual penetration in my helpless body quenched your thirst? Why is no one helping me? So many unanswered questions. The screams, the blood, the tears, the bruises, the humiliation. When will it end? Is this my fate? Is this how it's going to be? Is this how my life will pan out? Will I ever be free? Will I forever be your slave? Why is all this happening to me? All because of the precious jewel that lies between my thighs.
I was so young in this photo. If only I had known what was in store for me. I would have said, even though you're from a tiny community on the Cape Flats of South Africa, being an African girl doesn't disqualify you from anything. You come from humble beginnings, a blank canvas. But I'm here to tell you that you are an exceptional young girl with an imagination that touches the stars. I know that behind your contagious laughter, you're afraid. Afraid that the dreams that keep you up at night will not be realized and that you will never escape these cycles of poverty and violence that seep into your soul. I know that the only thing stitching all the pieces of you together is the belief that you will get out. You don't know it yet, but you will go far. And I'm just so proud of you. This house you grew up in, a shack in the backyard of someone else's home. This room, these walls, they have a story to tell. I know you get sad looking at the harsh conditions you see around you, especially how your sisters, aunties, and mothers battle every day to survive. But these experiences will soon be the reason you wake up in the morning. The reason you fight as hard as you do. You don't know it yet, but you will become an attorney working in the highest court of our land. I was 18 when I went to the University of the Western Cape and I did my first law degree. Became a lawyer, and then I went to the Constitutional Court. And then after that, I was appointed the youngest cabinet committee secretary that was allowed to sit in the meetings of the presidents and the minister. You will lead seminars and teach women to be a driving force in this democracy. The fact that I've worked in government meant that I saw what kind of decisions the government took and what impact that decisions would have on people like us. That's my job, to tell you the truth about the Constitution, to tell you the truth about democracy, and how you can influence the way democracy evolves in South Africa. You will not speak for them, but you will amplify their voices when they can't, teaching them the value of the vote and how to use their power. So I know that where I am now is exactly what I'm supposed to do, and that is opening up the minds of brilliant young women like yourself. And I mean, you as the leaders, the young women leaders, Women Lead movement. You will start the Women Lead movement and be an internationally recognized activist that will drive the global fight for equality, and this movement will elevate the voices of women in your community and around the world. The movement is not a selfish movement. It's a woman-led movement. I'm going to expect you to go back home, use the information, and educate your mom. We are born from the work of our mothers. I know you look into your mother's eyes and you see pain, but more so, you see her fierceness.
Nyali and I made the thing. These parties were always in front of the shack. So the shack was the place to be on the road. The place to be.
This one, I really love this one. Goodness, yeah, this is
your great days.
This was amazing.
This is your great days.
And I got my master's.
Clive and then the phone came along.
Were you proud that day?
Super proud.
You're always proud.
So proud. Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, for me to have sort of submitted. Like her, you will be fierce in fighting for their rights, for their dignity. You will fight because you believe that gender equality and justice must be achieved for both men and women alike. You will be on the front lines. Okay, so today we're going to discuss something a little, not really that different from human rights, because the issue of gender is also an issue of human rights, okay? Like the power balance is just totally skewed, and we need to rectify the balance. And I'm very happy that there's men in this room today that needs to hear all these things. Know that you will have to work harder than men to be recognized. You will have to work harder than women in other parts of the world to be seen as significant. Always remember that tough times don't last, but tough people do. You are a warrior who will emerge greater every time. I promise. You will often feel as if you don't fit in, but it was never your destiny to fit in. You were born to stand out. You will buy a house and support your family, and you will help other women do that for themselves too. You will send a message to world leaders saying that none of us are equal until all of us are equal. So keep your chin up and your heart strong, because the revolution has just begun. Yours in power, Melina Rousseau.
And that's all we have for this evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lenina Rasool. Good night.